Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Structure and Flow, the productivity podcast for creative entrepreneurs. I'm Dr. Manette Riordan here with my husband,
Brad Dobson.
Brad Dobson. I'm Flow, if you haven't guessed, and he's Structure.
That's me.
It is so true, but sometimes his roles flip.
Yeah. I get into my creative flow modes as well. That's for sure.
And then we meet other awesome creatives like our guest today who also love that space between structure and flow and know that it takes both to get business going. So today we are so excited to bring you Jeffrey Shaw. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Now, we're super excited to have you on the show. So we want to tell you a little bit about Jeffrey and then have him share more. But Jeffrey and I were recently connected by an amazing woman who was also a guest on our show named Ellen Rogan. We had a great conversation about generosity, kindness, and productivity. It was a really good conversation. So I know this one's going to be awesome as well. But Jeffrey is the author of a book I'm in the process of reading called Lingo. Let me make sure I get the subtitle right. Discover your ideal customer's secret language and make your business irresistible. And I love this concept. It reminds me a little bit of Seth Godin, but in a language I think that people get. Like I think that you personally model so beautifully, Jeffrey, getting your entrepreneur's lingo. So I'd love to hear more about your journey, how you got to where you are, and what are you excited about right now in your business?
Well, right now I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Well, thank you.
Marvelous.
So, yeah, it is. It's not a long shot, right? I get the lingo of the people I wrote the book for because I've lived this journey, right? I've lived the journey of a creative entrepreneur my entire life, literally. I've never received a paycheck from anyone. I've never had I know. It didn't strike me how odd that was until recently. I'm now 54 years old, and I literally have never had anybody write me a paycheck.
Wow.
I've been
not even through high school and university.
No, I sold eggs door to door when I was 14 years old. That was my first entrepreneurial venture because I lived in the country, and one thing we had an abundance of were chickens and eggs, and it was a couple hours north of New York City, and people were moving out to the suburbs from New York City, and they thought it was really cool to buy. This is before farm raised eggs, right? But I literally had farm raised eggs, and they thought it was cool to buy eggs. I sold eggs door to door from the age of 14 and have never looked back.
Wow.
So throughout, my career, I've sold eggs, and I remember selling Christmas cards door to door. And by the age of 20, actually 19, I went off to photography school. And by the age of 20, I went into the business of portrait photography by the age of 20. And I still do that to a limited degree now. But 34 years later, still doing a little bit, but prior to several years ago, it was my entire mainstay. And in particular, I photographed, I did family portraits for very affluent families. And as I often say, I basically was in the business of selling something nobody needed to the hardest market in the world. Right. And then because of my success in that industry, people started coming to me for coaching. And then I went to coach training. So for about the past 10 years, I've been supporting entrepreneurs through their entrepreneurial ventures and helping them, more than anything, helping them with their branding and marketing. Because even though as a coach and as a branding consultant, I serve a huge and broad range of people in different industries, the one thing we all have in common is that there's no business school for what we do.
Yeah.
And that is my area of expertise. I like to market the impossible. I like to market what's challenging. I like to help people develop the lingo with the people that they want to connect with so that they feel like they're building a community, not just a business.
So I'm curious, what was the moment when you realized that this idea of lingo, which I'll ask you also to define, or this concept of the secret language was like your secret sauce?
Mm-hmm. Great question, because it actually, it's a 30-year-old story, if you will. I mean, and that's what's really both shocked and pleased me about the book is that it's a 30-year-old story that's more relevant today. Mm-hmm. Because I had been I think innately I understood. So a little background here is I grew up lower middle class in a country town, a couple hours in New York City, had a failing business. I realized that I needed to change that business and realized that I was selling a luxury product. As I said, something nobody really needs. And the people that could afford luxury are the affluent market. So I understood that was the market I needed to reach. The problem was I knew nothing. At 23 years old at this time, I knew nothing about affluence. Right? I was a small country. I mean, affluence to me was, hey, you made $50,000, you were affluent. right? I mean, that's, what do I know of people, multi-millionaires in 25,000 square foot home? I know nothing about that. But what I realized instinctively, even at the age of 20, was that I could understand their lingo if I put some effort into it. And understanding their lingo, to me, that means understanding someone's essence. When you understand someone's lingo, and here's the irony of the whole concept of lingo, is that when you truly understand someone's lingo, you know how to connect with them in a way that it's so emotionally powerful and yet actually unspoken. Right. So it's the thing that happens in our own personal lives. When you do something, hey, you guys are a married team. Hopefully, Manette, hopefully he does something for you occasionally that's so powerfully and special, then you didn't even know to ask for it. Like he knew
every once in a while.
Every once in a while. But it's a home run, right?
Right.
It leads to good things. But that's the power of it. Like when you're able to do something for someone that you know them so well, you know what they need before they know they need it. Right? Or you know what they need and they can't even identify what they need. Right? And I believe businesses can do this for their customers as well. And that to me is what it means to speak their lingo. When you're actually speaking, lingo by definition is a jargon, et cetera. But really at the depth of it, it's an empathetic understanding of your customers so well that you're speaking to their emotional triggers. And that's what ultimately really moves people.
So this fascinates me. And we at least some level, we work through this with our clients. I think probably everybody coaching in the business world does a little bit. I'm guessing that you said you sort of knew it initially, even at 20, you knew how to do this with your clients. There's a lot of people obviously that don't have that skill, and you're helping them. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested tactically what it is you're able to take them, the journey you're able to take them on to develop that lingo. I mean, you could do interviews, you could do focus groups, you could do quizzes, whatever it is. What is it what are the key parts that you need to develop that lingo with someone who's selling, painted ducks to whatever it is.
Yeah, he's going to share the Bergdorf Goodman story, right?
I'll tell you this story. So, a strong distinction though is I actually didn't know how to do it. I just knew I needed to do it.
Gotcha.
Right. So, 23 years old, I would have no idea how to do this. I just knew that I needed to do it because I needed to reach a market that I knew nothing about. And actually, I want to kind of get back to Manette's question a little bit. That how this story came about is here it is. 30 plus years later, I was having a conversation with who turned out to be the editor of Lingo. I was having a conversation with her and I told her the Bergdorf Goodman story. And she's like, there's your book. Like everything you learned in that story is exactly what you need to teach others. So I had lived this experience, but now needed to figure out how to lay it out in a book. And the goal was, as I was working with AJ, my editor, I kept saying to her, we're writing a linear book for non-linear thinkers. Yeah. Right? You and I, we all serve a similar audience. Like we are the squirrel chasers. We're all and I embrace all that. Like I'm not looking to, you might have to harness the squirrels to go in one direction, but I'm not looking to shut down anyone's creativity. Yeah. So I wanted to figure out how can I give the creative-minded person a strategy to do this in their business in a linear fashion. So what I did is I worked it down to the 5 key emotional triggers that even after all these decades, these 5 emotional triggers seem to be the emotional triggers that you want to capture when branding in your business and communicating to your clients that is most likely to attract to you your ideal customer. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? The goal, no business exists for everybody. We all have our ideal customers, those customers that are the easiest to work with, that are the most profitable. And I will say probably most important is they allow us to do our best work. And that's what's important for creatives. We want to work with customers who already value what we do. So we're not wasting our time proving our value, but they already value what we do and who we are. And with those customers, those clients, we create our greatest value. We do our best work. And when we do our best work, we have happier clients and they're more likely to tell other people. If there's ever a journey or a secret to exponential success, it truly is only working with your ideal customers.
Sure.
The problem is a lot of people get stuck in the cycle that some money is better than no money, but it's not in the long run. Right. Yeah. So, maybe to set the stage, so I do feel, to give value to your listeners, I want to make sure we go over those 5 emotional triggers, but sounds like Manette wants me to back up a little bit and tell you the Bergdorf Goodman story.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think it's a visual example that answers Brad's question of, well, how do I figure this out?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even whether you stumbled in the door or you went on purpose, this was how you figured it out.
Yeah. And I very much went on purpose. And, you know, we're talking about also about the 80s. So brick and mortar was really the only approach. Nowadays, you can do a tremendous amount of work by just really, you know, researching online and find out, you know, more about your ideal customers. So the Bergdorf Goodman story is, once I realized that I had this awareness that I needed to reach the affluent market, but I knew nothing about them. I wanted to understand their lingo, meaning I didn't really understand what the business did. I wanted to understand the people that went to the business. And that's a big difference. Too often we study other businesses. I wanted to understand what the people that went to that business that I wanted to model experienced. What were their emotional triggers? So Bergdorf Goodman, if anyone's not familiar with it, it's a one-of-a-kind department store, exclusive department store in New York City on Fifth Avenue at 59th Street, one of the busiest intersections in the world. And yet most people don't even know it's there because it's not for everybody. But it is a one-of-a-kind store. So I go in this store. It's, of course, you know, marble floors. The salespeople are impeccably dressed. I mean, I grew up going to like cheap department stores, you know, Kmart, right, Caldor back in the day. So here I go in the store, and I had literally, at 23 years old, I had $20. That's all I had. I had $20 in my pocket. And as soon as I walked in and I walked into what was the jewelry department, I realized right away there is nothing here that would be, you know, $20. But I head up to the home accessories floor, hoping there'd be something there for $20 I could buy. And I found this tiny votive candle. And it's really small little candle. Nonetheless, I asked for it to be gift wrapped because I suspected, I could tell already that presentation was a big part of the lingo of affluent people, the lingo of making something look high quality and expensive. So I asked for it to be gift wrapped. As I walked over to the gift wrap department, actually I was escorted to the gift wrap department by the sales lady. When she left me, I leaned over this window to the woman of the gift wrap department and I said to her, "Excuse me, but can you show me how to make this look expensive and high quality? Because I'm trying to figure out what rich people like." I was blunt with her, right?
I love it.
Right. She laughed. I mean, this was like the first person in the store I felt like I could relate to. Somebody that, you know, gets their hands dirty. So she actually invited me into the back room, and she started wrapping this candle in wads of tissue paper, like full sheets of tissue paper bunched together for this tiny little candle. And then she goes to put the candle in a silver metallic box, which is clearly their signature packaging. She goes to put this candle in the box, and then she stops with this ridiculously dramatic pause. She looks up at me and she said, "Don't use any tape."
I love this.
And I'm like, why wouldn't I use any tape? Like, gift wrapping has always involved tape. I grew up in a family, we wrapped our Christmas presents in newspaper and duct tape. Like, how do you not use tape? So I asked her, I said, "Why can't I use any tape?" She goes, "Well, this high quality customer who is a perfectionist, they're going to, before they give this as a gift, they're going to untie the ribbon on the box top. They're going to take off the top of the box. They're going to unfold the tissue paper, make sure the candle is in perfect shape, put the tissue paper back, the top back on, and retie the ribbon. If there was any tape, you would not be able to do that without ruining the packaging." It was such a small detail, but it was like a secret code. That's where I came up with the secret language. This was like a secret language, because if you aren't a wealthy person, if you don't shop at those stores, you would have no idea that no tape is a secret language. Right? If I didn't know that, I would have taped the heck out of that tissue paper and given it to my clients, and I would have appeared to be a slouch to them. I would not have been speaking their lingo. But believe me, even learning that small thing, and to this day, by the way, 34 years later, I still package every photograph I deliver the same way. It is a clear indication to my high-end clients that I know exactly how they tick.
Right.
That's speaking their lingo. Now, that was one of many small ones. This was like a light bulb moment. I realized, okay, there's like a whole other language, and I'm not in that world, but if I can understand the lingo of that world, I can be in that world. Then I started looking around at the pricing psychology and the designer names that were everywhere. My business wasn't in my name at that time. I had a cute photography name. But so I changed it to Jeffrey Shaw, being in my own name, because that clearly carried a cachet. Part of the lingo of this market was they wanted to buy brand names, people's names, right? So it literally was an afternoon that changed my life, that I then set about, gave myself a goal of 3 months to completely reposition, rebrand my business, move it to an art market that could afford my services, and no turning back. Within 1 year, my business multiplied 5 times, and it's never been nothing but uphill since.
This is a fantastic story. It's so interesting because it's timely for me. I just started listening to the Guy Raz podcast, How I Built This.
Yeah, great podcast.
And I think one of the most recent ones was with the lady who developed Rent the Runway.
Yeah.
And so when she was pitching this, the realization for her about that she could make this work was when she was talking to these young women who were not affluent at all, people who would look at runway level dresses and never be able to afford them. But we're also saying, I just went out in my 3 different dresses on three different club nights, and I've been on Instagram in each dress, and I can't be seen in that same dress again for the next Instagram photo. And she realized that they wanted experiences. They didn't want to buy the dresses. They wanted the experience of them and to be able to put that into the world on their Instagram, for instance.
Yeah.
And so the reason I relate that is that it's very much similar to the story you just told in terms of being inside their heads and understanding what the key thing is that that person really wants.
Yeah.
What it is.
I love that you just said that.
At an emotional level.
Yeah.
Like you said, not even at a verbal level. It's a communication. Exactly. I'm getting this now. It's a communication, a nonverbal communication.
In my, I know, which is the irony of writing a book called Lingo, right? But in my keynotes, one of the things it's actually on a slide and everybody wants to take a picture of it. But I say the ultimate compliment in business is, wow, it's like you're in my head.
Yeah.
Right? When your brand messaging, your core messaging speaks so much to someone's heart, like speaks their lingo, and they say, wow, it's like you're in my head. Like, it's a done deal. You can charge them whatever they want, whatever you want. Like, premium price no longer matters as much. The bond that it creates loyalty, retention, referrals. It's like there is no stronger emotion, I think, for people to feel like, wow, it's like you're in my head. And I also often refer to it as the new standard of know, like, and trust. Right? Because in business for years, we've been saying, well, you need to get people to know, like, and trust you before they'll buy. It's like, I believe people want more than that. They want more than your know, like, and trust. They literally want to feel like you get them.
Yeah, they want a connection.
Mm-hmm.
They want a connection. And I think this is what I said earlier, that it's a 30-year-old story that's more relevant today, because as the world continues to head towards more technology and AI and all this stuff we're headed towards, I've been in business and in the world long enough to know that every time the world goes in one direction, the opposite is true. And as we become a more technology advanced world, there's going to be a stronger craving for connection and humanity. And those businesses that understand their customers with such deep empathy and speak their lingo will stand out, because it's going to be a rare experience compared to how we're treated in the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I love in the book you talk about, instead of know, like, and trust, what people want to feel is that they've been seen and heard. Exactly. And, it's something you learn in coaching training, right? It's something you learn in parenting, the power of reframing. But it's that people want to show up and just instantly go, wow, you get me. I think that's so crystal clear. And, we always joke that we love getting a lot of coaching from people on our podcast, right? We walk away with so many insights and things to do. And it's how I felt when I was reading your book. It's like, this is so good. And it's like so easy for me to do it for other people. And I struggle to do it for myself. And I think entrepreneurs needed to be reminded of that. You cannot build your business in a vacuum. And I think so often creatives are very introverted and they're at home behind their computer trying to figure all this out. And at the end of the day, you got to go talk to real people. Yeah. And so I so appreciated this idea of really getting out and looking at, talking to, connecting with, having conversations to get to the place where you understand those 5 secrets of the emotional landscape that you're creating for
Yeah.
people.
And honestly, this is the business model that fits creatives the best.
Yeah.
I am a creative. I said, this is why I can relate so well and why the book speaks to the audience that it does, is because this has been my life. This is the business model for creatives. For years, I would walk off a stage and people would walk up to me and say, thank you for giving me permission. And I didn't know what they meant. I'm like, what have I given you permission for? And I realized that through my work, I was actually offering a business model for creatives that didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because they feel, that horrible pressure of, I have to pick a niche. I have to focus on one thing. I am so not a focus on one thing person. Why is the world telling me to focus on one thing? And I guess I can never be successful in business, which is why so many creatives say, well, I hate the business side. Of course you hate the business side because you've never been allowed to be in business in a way that leverages your strengths. And introversion, I'm an introvert, I always am a trained introvert, but I've outgrown it, you could say. But I mean, introversion, relationship building, everything empathy, like that is the biggest buzzword in business today, I think it should be, is these are the natural strengths of most creatives.
Yeah.
Like if there's ever been a time when we get to be at our best in business, this is it. Like these are actually skill sets that I think the creative business owner is best at.
Yeah, it's so true. So I'd love for you to share about the 5 secrets, and I also want to talk about this. So I want to talk about the French fry story.
Okay.
He's just drawing stories out of you today.
I love that you want to even ask that. I have done, oh my gosh, I've probably done 100 interviews since January to promote the book, and no one's asked me about the French fry story. So, and I love that story.
Favorite, I think, because I felt like you got me in that moment. You got me,
and it was so insane. So I can't wait to get back to that, because it was one of the it's insane. So the 5, and I refer to them as emotional triggers, right? Because these are 5 identifiable emotional triggers that will help your ideal client know that you were speaking their lingo. So step number 1 is perspective. You have to understand people's perspective in order to speak their lingo. The problem with this is, as I was saying earlier, when people saying I give them permission, I think I give them permission to build business the right way, because businesses are inherently built backwards. The way businesses are typically built, businesses are built from an idea and they're born from ideas and built on ambition, right? People have an idea and then they build this business. First thing we do is we design a logo and a business card, we build a website, we fill it up with words, then we put ourselves out there and we wonder why we're not getting any customers or our ideal customers. Well, it's because you haven't built the business for the people you want to speak to. So that's why in this order, these 5 steps are imperative, and you cannot build a business speaking anybody's lingo until you really understand their perspective. That's why I went to Bergdorf Goodman. I needed to understand the perspective of a world I knew nothing about. So, if you're an artist and your patrons are wealthy, then do you know their lingo? Do you understand their perspective? How do they view things in the world? How do they view the value of your art? If your audiences are millennials, do you really, without judgment and assumption, right? Because there's tons of judgments and assumptions about people we don't understand in our world. And that's the point. It's like without judgment or assumption, do you want to go through the effort of empathetically understanding their perspective? So step number 1 is it's the proverbial walking a mile in their shoes. And I don't care if the shoes are high heels, you got to do it, right? You got to figure out, what does the world look like from those you want to serve? Step number 2, truly the most powerful emotional trigger I know of, is familiarity, right? We are innately drawn to that which feels familiar to us, and familiarity we're drawn to it, and it gives us comfort. I challenge anyone, if you go to Europe, I challenge anyone to not see a Starbucks or a McDonald's logo. You can't not see it because it's so familiar to us. But familiarity is also a strong emotional tug at our heart. It's why there's comfort food. It's why we have traditions like Thanksgiving or Christmas where we eat the same meal every year, because there's such a comfort in what is familiar. And it stands out. I mean, you were just naturally drawn. I think everyone knows the feeling of, there's something, maybe it's a movie or a book or something you've never heard of until someone tells you about it, but then you can't not see it, right? You see it everywhere.
Yeah, it's like you buy a white minivan and then all of a sudden all you see on the road are white minivans.
Right. And actually literally happened to me when years ago, when my kids were younger, my daughter was about 10 years old, and I bought a Land Rover because I had a Mini Cooper, which was no longer working as a single dad with 3 kids. So I had to get an SUV. I got the Land Rover, and literally my 10-year-old daughter said that one day. We're driving down the road and we were living in Connecticut. So what she said was true. We're driving to the road and she said, "Daddy, before you bought this Land Rover, I'd never heard of Land Rover. Now every other car on the road is a Land Rover." And to hear that from a 10-year-old, it was like, she couldn't have thought that. It's just an awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the power of familiarity, and incredibly powerful. So you want to recreate in your own business that feeling of familiarity. It doesn't mean you're copying, but what feels familiar in their world, right? Are they more comfortable in Home Depot or a high-end boutique?
Yeah.
What environment feels familiar to them? The third is style. Style is similar to familiarity, but different in that style is the decision maker. We make decisions every day based on whether we feel like the style of something speaks to us. And this is so true of art. Why do we buy style? Why do we buy certain art? Right? We choose art based on the style. Like I like abstract landscapes, right? And when I vacation, I will tend to buy a piece of art from where I vacation rather than some trinket.
Us too.
So I've got beautiful art from Italy and Ireland, and I like abstract landscapes. That's a style I like. I'm much more of an abstract person, but not so abstract you don't know what it is, but you can tell it's a landscape, right? I often compare it to if you're shopping at a discount store like a TJ Maxx, and all the designer styles are on one rack for your size. You flip through those hangers. What makes you stop? The style. You hold it up and you think, this is so me.
Yeah.
So you want to create a brand image and a website that your customers, that it stops them in their tracks because it feels like it's speaking to them, right? So that's style. The next is pricing psychology. And let's face it, you both know that a lot of creatives hate pricing. We're afraid of pricing. But pricing creates perception. So the first thing I say to my clients when I start working with them is, how do you want to be perceived? What perception do you want to create? Do you want to create a perception that you're high end? Do you want to create a perception that you're affordable? And if you want to create the perception that you are high end and an artist to be respected, then you better command a price that says that, right? Because we have all made decisions to not purchase something because it was so inexpensive. We assumed it was poor quality, right? I have always been one of the most expensive portrait photographers you'll find because it was an intentional effort to create a perception that this was going to be quality. This was not for everybody. And that, it was low volume. I did a limited number of shoots, even at the peak of my career. This was not for everybody. So the price to create that perception.
Those folks that you're selling to don't want to feel like they're, buying the equivalent of a Walmart portrait studio type of thing, right?
Yeah. Unless that's your market, right? If you're in a business that's higher volume, and that's, I love that you bring up Walmart. And I often ask audiences that I'm speaking to, because once you understand the concept of lingo, you realize you can't unsee it, right? Walmart has a very specific lingo. It's very cost conscious.
Yep.
Right? Everything about their business, rollback pricing. The pricing is priced to the 100th of a cent. So you don't feel like you're paying more than a 100th of a cent more than you have to. The layout of the store, the bright lights, the end caps that are busy, clutter, because clutter is associated with lower end. You go into a high-end store, you're not going to see a register, right? You go into a Walmart, all the registers are lined up front. You go to a Neiman Marcus, you're lucky if you can find the register. It's tucked away. It's tucked behind merchandise. Maybe in Bergdorf Goodman, they're in separate rooms. It's not transactionally minded. They don't want to bring any attention to the cost.
Right.
So, Walmart, as an example, is very cost conscious. Target, similarly, in a way, but they're very value conscious, right? People at Target will spend money. They just want to feel like they're getting more money than what they're paying. And if you'll notice, Target and Walmart are almost always right down the street from one another, because the truth is both exist in the same market, cost conscious people and value conscious people. They're just carving out their space because they're speaking the lingo of the people they want to reach.
Right.
I love that. And what's number 5?
Number 5 is words, right? So now, and that's why I said these steps have to be done in order. Now, you can apply words to attract your ideal customers and filter out those that you don't want, right? So the words that you use, it's not until you understand someone's perception, what feels familiar to them, what looks like a style that speaks on their behalf, and you've aligned your business with their pricing psychology, it's only then can you actually start speaking to them and put words on your website that actually are speaking to that specific person. Otherwise, it's a shot in the dark. You're just putting whatever words you want out there, and there's no attempt to speak to a specific customer.
I love that. And I love everything you said. And I really do feel they're emotional triggers. And I'm curious about what you see on the emotional side for your clients, because what we've experienced working with creatives is that their head and their emotions get in the way of them doing this work, right? And it's hard to see the perspective, familiarity, style, and pricing when you're also being told, well, I have to be an original, or I'm worried about, well, what if they don't like it? Or what if I'm pricing it too much? So how do you support people with kind of the personal development side of building a business?
Yeah. So everything in my world of coaching, whether it's, my podcast is Creative Warriors, the coaching, the branding work that I do. In fact, the tagline on Creative Warriors says it all, and it is business with a soul. Right. So that's the lingo I speak, and those are the people I draw forward. Right. I want to draw forward the people that want a new way of doing business. They want to do business with a soul. So they're neither so business oriented that they want to work with anybody. They're overly aggressive, but they're also not so woo woo that they're just sitting back and manifesting. That's not my ideal client. Like, my ideal client are people that want to do business, but from a place of soul. Right. Because, again, I've tried both. I don't resonate with the people that are so spiritual that, we spend countless hours with them talking about visions that came to them. I'm like, but yeah, what are we doing about that? I'm too abstract. I don't want to just sit and, around the campfire. It's like, what are we doing with that?
Yeah.
Right. And that's imperative as a branding consultant, because I'm brutally honest with people. It's like, I understand you have a great idea, but if I don't see it as marketable, I'm not going to suggest that you invest in my services to help you brand it.
Right.
It has to be marketable. But the thing is, I think most things are marketable.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think most things are marketable if you figure, because there's something out there for everybody.
Yeah.
You just have to really figure out. I think a couple of, one of the phrases I use that tries to reset the mindset of the creatives is, how different would the world of business feel to you if you believe the audience that you want to reach is already there, just waiting for you to show up? And I do believe that. I think there's an audience for everything.
Oh, especially these days.
Right. Your job is to figure out how to show up in their world. One of the most retweeted posts I've ever done, I put it in every one of my keynotes, and everybody takes a picture of it, and it winds up all over the place, is that it's not your job to prove your value to anyone. It is your job to find the people who value what you do.
Nice.
Right? We have to stop, again, business of the soul. We have to stop trying to sell people. We have to stop trying to convince people. It's a waste of time, because inherently you can't really convince anybody to value something they don't already value. Then you're selling.
Yeah.
Right.
But there is a whole audience of people out there that already value who you are and what you do. Find them. Make your brand messaging so strong that you stand out above everybody else, and they see you like a beacon of light.
I love that.
I think the wonderful thing here is just, I hope that people hear how intentional this approach is to connecting, getting that connection with the people that value you. And we see this so much, and I admire it so much in people like yourself, Jeffrey, and other experts we see in the business, is the intentionality that they bring to developing these things. You got to sit down and do the work to really understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And when I think about, okay, so how does this relate to structure and flow and productivity? Like, when you get this nailed, you get to let go of all the stuff you're doing, all the busy work and all the marketing and the memes and the blogging and you get to let go of all of it and just write love letters to your people, and they show up, right? To me, it's when people really get that a solid brand that's built to attract your ideal clients is right, the people do show up, and that you're not just shooting in the dark.
Yeah. And I think, how it all ties into productivity as well is my favorite quote of all time is by Jim Rohn. And his quote is that our level of success rarely exceeds our level of personal development. Right? That means everything to me, even from a productivity standpoint, because when I want to grow, if I want to grow my business, if I want to be more productive, first turn to how do I need to grow as a person?
Yeah.
How do I grow as the person to raise the ceiling for which the level of success that I want is going to come up underneath that ceiling and touch that ceiling, and then I can raise it again. So I always turn towards how can I improve myself? How can I develop who I am and how I think in order to become more successful and productive?
I love that. And it's a lot what we talk about, that productivity is a mindset.
Yeah, and the French fry story you mentioned, right? So let's
yes,
kind of
the French fry story, please.
It's truly one of, I think it's something I kind of want to bust up in the world, because we live in such a black and white world. And I think it is truly one of the biggest obstacles to people's own personal development. Like everything has to be so black and white. So what happened with the French fry story is, as I was writing the book and really feeling the frustration of living in a world where, you had to be this or that, black or white. So this waitress, I'm at a kind of a casual, I live here in Miami, and it was a casual fish and burger restaurant on the water. And the waitress takes my order, and I think I was ordering a cheeseburger or what have you. And she said, "What kind of fries would you like with that?" And I said, "What kind of fries do you like?" I said, "What kind of fries do you have?" Almost with a sarcastic sigh, she's like, "We have regular fries, curly fries, spicy fries, waffle fries, steak fries." Like, it was just this never ending list of the types of fries. So I looked at her and said, "I'd like all of them." And she goes, "You can't have all of them." I said, "Why not?" She goes, "Because we don't do it that way." I said, No, I'm not asking for more fries than normal. I just want a little sampling of all of them." She said, "But I can't do that." I'm like, "Why not? They're all made. Right? I just want a little sampling of all of them." And this threw her for such a loop, because this isn't how the world functions, right? I'm forced to make a choice. Pick a fry. I'm like, I don't want to pick. I don't like picking between black and white, this way, that way. Why not sample the whole world? So she was getting frustrated, and I said, "Look, just talk to the chef. I'll bet you can if you try." So then I just kind of wanted to kind of pick her up. I'm like, "I'll bet you could do it if you really try. I'll bet if you go back there, he'll think you're crazy, but I bet you can do it." I was trying to cheer her on. And a little while later, she came with my burger and a plate of sample of all the fries, and she was beaming from ear to ear. I think she was a little proud of herself and I felt like I taught her a lesson that day, that going through life, she was young. And I'm like, we don't have to go through our life always being forced to choose between things. When you stop choosing between things, you start choosing everything. And that to me is the fundamental lesson of abundance and having a creative business. We all want everything. We want personal fulfillment. We want success in our life. We want success in our business. We want happiness. We want everything. Then why live a life of choosing things? Why not choose everything? I actually did a whole keynote talk about this a couple of years ago. It was called "Life is an Everything Bagel." And I studied the history of an everything bagel. And I said, I admire the brilliant baker who at some point got frustrated choosing between sesame seeds and garlic and onion and just said, "Screw it, I'm going to put everything in one bagel."
I love that. That's my favorite bagel. I love the everything bagel.
Who doesn't love an everything bagel? It's got everything in it. So why shouldn't we live that way?
Awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap this up. So much juicy goodness. We could keep talking for hours.
I think so.
We probably need to have another podcast and just keep this conversation going. Thank you very much for your time. And Jeffrey, where should people go if they want to connect with you, follow you, listen to your podcast?
Find out about the book.
Sure.
Actually, a fun thing I like to do on podcasts, which I'll offer to your audience, I don't always, but hey, you seem like a fun group. I actually spend a fair amount of my week reviewing other people's websites. I do a quick review of their website, and then I email them back and say, "Here's some of the lingo breaks I see in your website." And it doesn't take me that long. It sounds like a daunting task, but unfortunately, it's so obvious that it actually doesn't take that long. So if you go to lingoreview.com, there's a real quick application to fill out, because I want to hear who you think you're talking to. And then I look at your website and I'm like, honey, that's actually not what you're saying. Sorry. 98 out of 100 websites in my own research have it wrong. Wow. 98 out of 100.
Yeah, we know we have it wrong.
That's a fantastic offer.
So it's really fun. Like I said, and it sounds more daunting, but it doesn't take me long because I look at your website the way your potential customers are looking at your website, and I can instantly see the break. So lingoreview.com. And then once you're there, I think my links to my book, the link of the book is also available on Amazon. But, and I'm easy to find on social media. Everything you need to find is there. But hey, rather than just chatting, let me do something for you, a value, and then we can start a relationship.
Lovely.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's an incredibly generous offer. And I know all of the creatives that are listening to this will take advantage, including us.
Good stuff. We'll have that in the show notes.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Structure and Flow. Have a great day.